This is the MyExcel Online podcast, episode number 4.
Just the traveling Excel tip salesman. Travel from one city, collect cool tips, and then take them on to the next city.
Welcome to the MyExcel Online podcast, the need-to-know Excel insights, knowledge, and tips brought to you by the experts that know them best. Are you ready to explore your full potential and get better at Excel? It's time to stand out from the crowd with your host, John Michaeludis.
G'day guys, and welcome to the MyExcel Online podcast with your host, John Michaeludis. In today's episode, we have an Excel MVP since 2007, who is one of the biggest names associated with Excel. He's the author of 40 books about Microsoft Excel, Power Pivot, and Power View. He writes monthly Excel articles for Strategic Finance magazine and weekly on CFO Learning Pro. He has produced over 1,900 episodes of his daily video podcast called Learn Excel from MrExcel and has given live Power Excel seminars throughout the United States, Canada, and Australia. He has a website which is a one-stop for Excel tips and solutions and maintains a popular Excel forum which has over 4 million posts and over 300,000 members. He's nicknamed Mr. Excel because he is the one and only Mr. Excel. Let's welcome from Akron, Ohio, Mr. Bill Jelen. Hi, Bill.
Hey, John. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being on the show, and it's a real privilege to have you on there. You've been an idol of mine for many years. So,
all right,
buddy. Now, I've told our listeners a little bit about your background. Why don't you tell us more about yourself personally and your journey to becoming an Excel expert?
Yes. So that all started. I had a great day job straight out of college, working in a finance and accounting department. I had an IT background, so I was originally started with this company doing some COBOL programming, and the finance department wanted faster reports, so they bought this great 4th generation reporting package. And then I saw a job posting that they wanted someone to run those reports, so I moved up to the finance department. And on day one, this was back in 1989. On day one, I discovered that this $100,000 reporting package would not produce the reports they wanted. But luckily, there was a button there that was, one of the most popular buttons in all reporting tools. It was export to spreadsheet. I had just gotten a nice raise to move up to finance, and all of a sudden now he wants his reports faster, and I'm dumping the data from the mainframe into Lotus 1-2-3 at the time. And so I became very good and very fast at finding ways to take lots of mainframe data and produce reports very quickly. That was it. I kind of, became the most knowledgeable guy in spreadsheets in the company. And that was great job security because I could produce reports faster than my old friends back in the IT department. And although there were a lot of layoffs there, as the company went through some downtimes, they never got rid of me because I was the one guy who could get the information out. Right? That's an important role in the company, knowing where to get the information and how to transform it. So that really became how I became good with Lotus first, and then later Microsoft Excel.
All right, and then after that, you started your website called MrExcel.com. Now, on there, you have Excel resources. You have a forum, which has over 300,000 members and millions of posts and threads. You have YouTube podcasts. You also have Excel products, Excel books, ebooks, CDs, and you also have Power Excel training sessions. Tell us a little bit about the evolution of MrExcel.com.
So it all started in, I think it was 1988. 1988.
It's a long time ago.
No.
You can say 87, 89. Doesn't matter. It's a long time ago.
1998.
Yeah.
98. And the company that I was working for, there was a hostile takeover bid. Our competitor was going to come in, swoop in and buy us, and I was sure they were going to fire everybody. So I actually launched the website. It was Thanksgiving weekend in the United States on that Friday. And I said, hey, I'm trying to write an Excel book. Send me your Excel questions. I'll answer a question here on the website, and the best questions went up in the book. That was the stated purpose, right? But secretly in the back of my mind, what I was saying is, look, if I can get 50 people to send me Excel questions, then if I get fired in a couple of months after this takeover bid goes through, I will have 50 places to send my resume. This was all created as a job hunting scheme.
Very smart.
Yeah. I don't know. And so the site went live on the weekend. We got picked up in the Excite.com engine in the top 10 there. And then that next Wednesday, the first 2 questions arrived. Like, it actually worked. Now, a funny thing happened during the takeover process. Our competitors discovered accounting irregularities. They backed out of the deal. So now I got people sending me Excel questions. I'm not out of a job, right? So I would get up every morning for an hour before work, answer questions from 5 to 6, and then go into work for the day. So that's kind of how it all started.
And what were the first couple of questions? Do you remember them?
Oh, geez, I do remember. It was horrible because the first day, John, I knew everything about my job in Excel. I knew how to take data. I knew how to do data consolidate. I knew how to do VLOOKUPs.
Yep.
I knew how to do pivot tables. I knew how to do everything I needed to do. But there's so many different people using Excel in so many different ways. The first 2 questions came in. First one was an engineer asking about the equal best sold J function, something I had never used before.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, scientist doing fast Fourier transforms. So I was 0 for 2 on the first day. I was like, what a horrible, horrible way to start. This is terrible. What a mistake. Here I've called myself MrExcel because in my little world, the place where I worked, I was MrExcel. I was the smartest guy about Excel amongst my 400 coworkers. But it was not a good way to start at all. But, it was beautiful. I wasn't live in front of an audience, so I'd get up every morning. I'd see the question. If I didn't know what it was, I'd go figure it out and then send the answer back. So answering other people's questions really made me a lot better with Excel. And I think that, people who participate in forums, same kind of thing there. You may not know the answer to the question, but in the process of figuring out the answer, you learn a lot along the way.
That's right. You can never stop learning Excel, and no one is a master in Excel or has all the answers straight away. And sometimes it takes a little bit of hunting and looking into blogs and reading into books to get to that answer. And there's always different resources. And one of those resources is your Excel forum. You have over 300,000 members, 4 million posts. Now, that's a lot of stuff. A lot of our Excel MVPs and experts started learning Excel using your forum.
It's an amazing, amazing resource. It all started. So remember, I was getting up every morning and answering questions from 5 to 6. When I started getting more questions I could answer in an hour, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? Start getting up at 4. So I put the first message board up on the site saying, hey, you can send your question to me or you can post it here. And then just do me a favor. After you post your question, read the couple of questions before yours and see if you can help someone out, right? Like we have a thing here in the United States called the take a penny, leave a penny jar. If you have an extra penny at the cash register, you just throw it in the jar. The next guy needs a penny, he takes it. I mean, that was the whole concept. And, it was kind of crazy. I didn't really pay attention at first. I noticed there were like 2 or 3 people that were popping in every day just to answer a question or 2 here or there. One day I got backed into a corner at work. I couldn't figure something out. So I went out to my own message board, and posted a question anonymously, and I went to lunch. And then I came back, and a couple hours later, this guy from the other side of the world, Ivan Moala from New Zealand, had given me the answer. I'm like, this is amazing, right? Here's a guy halfway around the world who just gave me this great Excel tip, and so we kept every question live. We've never deleted a question, and like I know Microsoft has their own forums, and a new version of Office comes out and the forums get all screwed up and they lose all the old questions. Those are like gold, right? I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, and the people that hang out or have hung out over the years, some of the smartest formula writers I've ever seen. You go out to my site and you find something from Aladdin or Barry Houdini or John Moe 1. And you look at that formula. I'm not great at array formulas. I look at that formula and my head just spins. It's like, how would anyone ever figure this out? And on the formulas tab, they have that great little evaluate formula icon. If I get a formula for my own board, I always have to run it through evaluate formula just to watch and see how the thing, does its magic. I love it. It's great. It's the greatest community ever. People send me questions personally. I'm like, well, shoot, I don't know, but you should go check the forum because those guys are a lot smarter than I am.
What's the weirdest question that you've seen posted?
You get people who are completely new to Excel. They're completely lost. You'll get a question where they're basically trying to enter the same formula 6,000 times, right?
Mhm.
And you just shudder to think that they have started down this process. Maybe they're 1,000 in, right? And now they're coming to us and say, well, is there an easy way? And you add a couple of dollar signs to the reference, and all of a sudden it is the same formula all the way down. You double click the fill handle, and you're done, right? And you feel bad for the guy must have wasted a week entering the 1,000 formulas.
No.
B, for every guy who posts, there's another 100 people who never even thought to come online, and they just sit there blindly doing the same thing over and over and over again when there's a much faster way.
So you actually wrote the formula in one cell, went down a cell, and wrote it again from the start all the way down.
All the way down.
Oh,
right?
no.
Didn't even use, so there's that great little control ditto trick that would bring the formula down, and you could press enter or change whatever you needed to change or whatever. No, I mean, he was literally entering the formula over and over and over.
Yeah,
right.
And it happens. If it happens to one person, I say that it happens to thousands of people around the world.
I hate to tell these stories. I'm certainly not making fun of people.
No.
I feel bad. I was in a live seminar once, and John, there's tips in the seminar that I know will elicit a gasp from the room, right? People go, right? I was just meandering along, explaining something else, and I hit Alt equals to put a auto sum in, and this lady gasps. She's like, I'm like, what? Are you okay? How'd you get that total in? I said, how do you get the total in? She said, well, I grabbed my calculator, right? And she keys everything in and then types the total in. And I'm like, oh.
No.
Right?
Amazing.
Yeah, it makes you shudder a little bit.
Unbelievable. Wow. All right. Well, that's what we're here for, to teach the masses about Excel.
Right.
And you have a daily podcast show which you post on YouTube. It's called Learn Excel from MrExcel, and it's a 2-minute video on an Excel tip. You have over 1,900 episodes now, and I read that you started that back on iTunes. You had some video podcasts there, and then you went on to YouTube. Is that what happened?
Yeah, that was it. This was back in 10 years ago, right? So I was doing a show on Tech TV called Call for Help with Leo Laporte. That was beautiful. I would fly up to Toronto every month, tape 2 episodes a month. So I got to talk about Excel. And those people on that show were all technically just on the leading edge, right? So there was a co-host named Amber MacArthur who would always, I remember the day that Amber said, hey, there's this new site out. You should go reserve MrExcel. And that was Twitter, right? So Amber was like one of the first users on Twitter, and they were talking about podcasting, right? And so, what's a podcast? I said, a little radio show that you put out on iTunes. And so they kind of taught me the ropes of how to do podcasts. And while Leo was doing audio podcasts, Leo Laporte was doing audio podcasts, Amber had a video podcast. And it was so early, the iPod couldn't even play video. So by the time that the first iPod came out that supported video, I already had a video podcast out on iTunes. I remember I was one of the top 10 video podcasts on iTunes, which is, crazy to do that now. You'd have to be, CBS News or something like that. But back then, there was just no one else. There were probably only 11 podcasters, right? So it was easy to begin in the top 10. And so that was good. We would get 10,000 views of each episode.
Wow.
And it was a great way to, A, impart some Excel knowledge, B, make people aware of the book, because at the beginning and the end, you'd show the book. Try to do a podcast every weekday, so 5 days a week. There have been times when I'm in the course of writing new books that I just can't keep up with that. So with Excel 2016 coming out, I've been kind of behind this summer. But I'm going to start up again, going through the new MrExcel Excel book with all of those tips. So we'll get that started up here pretty soon.
Right on. All right. And now you also have on your website, MrExcel.com, you have all your Excel books. You have ebooks and CD tutorials. You've written 40 books. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. So you have pretty much a one-stop shop for Excel tips and solutions.
Even that saying that you're one stop for Excel tips and solutions. I mean, that was 1998 when I wrote that. And back in 1998, I didn't know anyone else, right?
Yeah.
I was the only person posting tips on Excel. And so right now, I don't agree with that statement anymore because there's a lot of great websites and a lot of great content. One thing I do every day is the Excel Daily News. So paper.exceldailynews.com, which showcases the great articles coming from all across the blogosphere about Excel. I'm trying to be much more inclusive today, promoting everyone's work, because I certainly don't have the corner out in Excel knowledge. There's so many great articles coming out from everyone every day. So, I'm trying to promote everyone. We're trying to improve white collar productivity. You don't want someone to sit down and spend 6 hours doing something that can be done in 6 minutes. It's a horrible way to, be very inefficient at work, and they can be doing something better, hopefully.
All right. Now let's go on to our next topic, which is your subject of expertise. Well, you're called MrExcel, so it has to be Excel, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would say just straight Excel across the board. For a long time, I had, my books on VBA were doing very well. And so I would kind of say I was a VBA guy, especially when I wrote a lot of VBA. We're doing VBA for consultants. But, when Power Pivot came along, I was very interested in Power Pivot. I could see that was going to change everything. So I wrote a book on Power Pivot. I have a book on charting. The book that I co-authored with Mike Alexander on pivot table data crunching. I'm a big fan of pivot tables. I'm a big fan of VBA. I love everything in Excel, right? All aspects of Excel.
Now, how would you define Excel to a non-Excel user in a few words?
Excel is a series of rows and columns. At the intersection of every row and column is a box or a cell. That cell can hold one of three things. It can hold some text, it can hold a number, or the most beautiful thing is it can hold a formula that does calculations on other cells. You change one cell anywhere in the spreadsheet and all of the cells recalculate. It's like having the world's greatest, amazing piece of green ledger paper that magically recalculates after you change any number. No more erasing, no more mechanical pencils. It just revolutionized the accounting world.
And that's only 1% of its functionality, what you just explained.
Sure, right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
A lot of people use Excel as notebooks, don't they? Just to jot down, a couple of words, and they don't use it to its full potential, do they?
It's a neat way, they think, to make lists. There's a great statistic that I heard from the Excel team. Starting in Excel 2003, there's this thing called the Customer Experience Improvement Program. And you didn't even notice that it was on the third day that you used Excel. They popped up a little box and said, hey, would you like to make Excel better? And most people didn't even read the box. They just clicked yes or okay or whatever. And so they know kind of what commands you're using and in what order you're using those commands. They have amazing statistics. So out of the 750 million people using Excel, the first 20% open Excel and have never done anything more than clicked print. They open a file from email and click print. That's 150 million people that have never done anything beyond print. And then the next 20% do some formatting, some column widths, change the colors, have never entered a formula, have never even hit the auto sum button. So that's 300 million people who, quote, use Excel that have never even put in one formula. So, hey, if you're listening to this and you've hit the auto sum button, congratulations, you're automatically at the 41st percentile. You're ahead of 300 million other Excel users just by entering your first formula.
And what do you think that is? Why don't people take that leap of faith or that next step into learning Excel?
I don't know if they think it's intimidating. I'm not sure. Are they afraid they're going to break something? It just presents itself as this big series of boxes, right? And with really no instruction on what to do. I guess if you're not willing to just dive in and figure out what's going on, then you're just stuck there with a bunch of boxes where you can enter some data and line things up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's incredible. All right, buddy. Now, this year commemorates 30 years since Excel started back in 1985. Yeah?
On the Mac, yeah. Excel 1.0 for the Mac.
Exactly. Now, have you seen the evolution of Excel since it debuted 30 years ago?
Well, first, Microsoft had a product called Multiplan. I remember using Multiplan on, get this, a TI-99 4A, little toy computer, but it ran Multiplan. But the father of this whole thing, well, the granddaddy in the 80s was Lotus 123.
Yeah.
First, there was the VisiCalc in 1979. By 1983, one of the VisiCalc sales reps had left VisiCalc and created Lotus 123 for the IBM PC. They enjoyed 89% market share in the late 80s. So Microsoft comes out with Excel. It's a GUI interface, right? It's all graphics based. It's incredibly slow. And Lotus just owned that market. They had 89% market share. But Microsoft had a long view. They knew that eventually computing power would catch up. And that started to happen in the early 90s. And so I always talk about 1993 through 1997. Those were the golden years because Microsoft and Lotus were battling for market share. And every version of either product that came out would just introduce amazing new things. And then the next release from the competitor would steal all of that stuff, right? And replicate it and then introduce even more amazing things. That period, that gave us pivot tables. That gave us automatic subtotals. That gave us VBA was introduced to Excel during that period. Just an amazing evolution of things. And I remember that my company, we switched somewhere around 1994 from Lotus 123 to Excel. So, most of the world, if you find people that used to use Lotus, you say, hey, do you remember when you switched? It was the mid 90s. And by 1997, it was pretty much over. Microsoft had won. They have no competitor now. And I think, from Excel 97 for the next several versions, it was really just kind of stagnant. There were not that many new things that came along, nothing really evolutionary. But now, we have competition from Google Spreadsheets, Google Docs. Tableau is certainly a competitor, and that's forcing the Excel team to really step it up and come out with amazing new things. We have recently Power Pivot in Excel 2010, lets you take data from 100 million rows and merge two sheets in one pivot table. Then Power View, which was an attempt to compete with Tableau, didn't work very well. But Power Map is amazing. Power Query, this great little thing they give away for free, is just jaw-dropping in what it can do. And now Power BI Desktop that just came out in July takes the Power Query concept and actually makes it work online, and you can then consume it on the iPad. There's so much amazing things that have come out in the last couple of versions. So I'm sure that Microsoft would rather be content and not have any competition. But hey, I love that competition because that competition gives us, the people that use Excel, it gives us just amazing new tools that we can use to become even more efficient.
And I just installed Power BI Desktop today.
It's great. Yeah. Did you have a chance to?
A little bit. Yeah, no, I didn't. I was just playing around with it, and I think tomorrow I want to get into more data. But it's amazing, isn't it? You can just download it on your desktop.
Yeah, right. And I had an Excel file that already had a data model in it. It had 4 tables that were joined in Power Pivot, and I sent that thing up there, and all of a sudden you can start to build the same visualizations you could have done in Power View, right? So, you say, okay, well, this is really nothing new. It's just Power View on the web. But then there's the second tab that's like an Ask Me Anything, right? And you just start typing questions in, and they start just generating charts to try and answer your question. And even as you're typing questions, right? So if it's an 8-word question, like after the 4th word, they have a chart. At word 5, the chart changes. At word 6, the chart changes again, right? And when you finally get to the, tell me the top revenue product, right? At top revenue, they produce a chart. Top revenue product, they now have products in there. In the East region, then all of a sudden, you get yet another chart. It's just mind-boggling how cool that English language interface is.
Did they bring that out just to quash the Tableau
it has
competition?
To be Tableau, right? Yeah, right. I mean, Tableau is right across town. So Microsoft is in Redmond. Tableau is over in Seattle. I always look at Tableau has one product, right? So I mean, they're promoting the heck out of Tableau. Microsoft has hundreds of products. Do you ever see them promote Excel? I mean, there's never an ad that is focused on Excel. There was that stupid Surface ad with the Excel error. There's never been an ad for Excel recently. It's just another product to them. So, I think it's tough. The Excel people see their former coworkers that left town or gone across town to work on Tableau. It has to be personal to be on the Excel team and be fighting Tableau. So, yeah.
What's the weirdest or coolest thing that you've seen done in Excel?
A few years ago, back when the spreadsheet turned 25, so that would have been in 2004, I produced a book called The Spreadsheet at 25, and I was looking for very unusual uses of Excel, right? And so these are certainly not common. There's a guy who wrote a flight simulator in Excel in order to train pilots, right? So he reproduced the 737 cockpit in Excel, and his flight school was Excel based, right? Which is just mind-boggling, right? So that's high tech. On the other end, there was a lady in Kentucky, or in the mountains of Kentucky, who was a quilter. She made quilts, and she learned that she could use Excel to design quilts it's a bunch of little squares, right? And she actually hired me to write a simple little macro. She would key in numbers, and then I would convert the numbers to various, let's call it quilt pattern sub-elements. So, you'd have the spreadsheet that was all just black and white numbers. You'd hit the macro key and bam, a quilt would pop out, right? So you look at that, everything from flying a 737 down to someone making handmade quilts. And they're both using the exact same product for their development, right? How amazing is that?
Remarkable, isn't it? The two different extremes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, now you give away an Excel master pin in your live Power Excel seminars for people that show you up or have better ways to do something in Excel. What are the best tricks that you've learned from these master pin winners?
Oh my gosh, John, it's amazing how many tricks I've learned from people in my audience. And the very first time that it happened, I was here in Akron doing a little seminar for the Chamber of Commerce, and I was showing them really, really cool stuff, right? And someone interrupted me with this crazy little question, right? How to join first name and last name together into a single cell using the proper function. And at first I was kind of annoyed by this because I had a plan of what I wanted to talk about. But what was fascinating is people were more interested in the answer to this question, a really basic question, than the cool stuff I was doing. So, that was one of my early lessons that listen to the audience, right? I always start out, I say, I look at people, I say, look, there's something that's going to happen today, and it happens every single time I do the seminar, all right? Someone in this room is going to see me do something today in Excel and say, wait a second, there's a better way. I said, I know it's going to happen. It happens every single time. And I can even make a prediction. No matter how the room is shaped, I say that the first person who's going to show me up today is going to be sitting in row 2, right? And I look at each individual person in row 2, like, who's it going to be? And I don't know why. I don't know why they always go to row 2, right? But they're always in row 2. The person who's the Excel rock star, who's, I guess it would be obnoxious if they were in row 1 showing me up, is they always go to row 2 every single time. All right. And so, I make that prediction, and within the first hour, someone in row 2 is giving me some trick that I've never seen. I say, well, there you go. It's row 2, right? And if it happens to be in row 6, then the joke is, oh, did you get here late and row 2 was full? You wanted to sit in row 2, didn't you? But 90% of the time it's row 2. So some of the tricks. Columbus, Indiana, tiny little town. I was showing how to convert formulas to values, Control-C, Alt-ESV, or whatever. This guy named Dave, he was actually in row 1. Dave in row 1 raises his hand and says, there's a better way to do that. And he proceeds to show me where you go to the right edge of the selection. You don't copy, you just select the data, go to the right edge, hold down the right mouse button, drag right, drag left, let go, and bam, this menu pops up that I've never seen in my life with copy here as values only, right? How does Dave in Columbus, Indiana accidentally discover right-click, drag right, drag left, let go, generates a new menu, right? That was a beautiful trick.
And I learned that from you because you said that you flew back from that session and you couldn't wait to go home and blog about it or write about it.
Yeah, right. That was on the next day's podcast, right?
Yeah.
Look at this amazing trick, right? And I use that trick. I'm a keyboard shortcut person, but I would use that trick a lot until Excel 2010 came along, and I discovered that there's a faster way to convert formulas to values using Control-C, of course, to copy. And then I don't know what it's called. It's on the right side of my keyboard between Alt and Control. It's a little key with a mouse pointer pointing to a right-click menu. If you press Control-C and release, and then press that key and release and press V, that converts formulas to values. So that's even faster.
On most keyboards don't have that mouse pointer. Do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I've used it once and now I've got this European keyboard and
yeah.
But it is a cool tip, yeah.
You have something else there. Another tip, this is a favorite. This is from Springfield, Missouri. He's my friend now, this guy named Derek. He's a real smart aleck. And he's been in several of my seminars. And he's usually there just to cause trouble, right? And he leaned over to the person next to him. I was talking about automatic subtotals. You put in the subtotals, you collapse it down to the number 2 view. And of course, if you've sorted by customer, the customers are in alphabetic sequence, right? And he leans over and he gets his coworker to ask me, well, wait a second, it's an alphabetic sequence. I want to see the largest customers at the top, all right? And, I know my data set really well. I know it's Walmart, General Motors, Exxon, Ford. Those are the 4 largest customers, but they have 65 records each. If I would sort that data and somehow Walmart would come to A2, well, that's a formula that's pointing at 60 rows above it. It's just going to be a disaster, right? And I'm like, oh, no, you can't do that. And Derek, Derek raises his hand. He says, "Oh no, you can do that." Right. And when it's in the collapsed view, I'll be darned, you could sort, and it sorts entire chunks or groups of records. Right. Who would have even been crazy enough to try that? Like, why would Microsoft have taken the time to make that work? But here, Derek in Springfield, Missouri, figured that one out. So I got that trick from Derek. The controlled ditto that I mentioned before, that was at General Electric in Cleveland. They would enter a sum formula and then go to the cell right below it and press Control quotation mark, right? And that brings the exact formula down and leaves it in edit mode so that way they could change to an average, right? It was something they all did every day. It was the trick that everyone there used constantly. And I had never heard of that trick until I walked into that place. So just every time I do a seminar, I'm picking up new tricks. And then, like you say, I come back, I put them on the MrExcel podcast. And actually, when it's time to update my book, the 567 tricks, what I do is I actually go back to my podcast. I look at all the podcast episodes in the last 2 years and say, okay, out of these, which are worthy of being added to the book? John, I mean, it's a racket. I'm traveling around from city to city. They're having me in to do a seminar, and in every city I pick up a new tip. And then I basically add these tips to a database called YouTube. And then when it's time to update the book, I've gotten all these great tricks. Just the traveling Excel tip salesman. I travel from one city, collect cool tips, and then take them on to the next city.
Okay, let's take a short break, and we're back to talk about Bill's new Excel book.
Can you analyze this spreadsheet using Excel pivot tables?
Sure, if you can show me how to.
Introducing the Extreme Pivot Table online course, which teaches you how to analyze business data and highlight key metrics so that you can make insightful business decisions, create interactive analytical dashboards that will reach top management, and set you apart from your peers, which will make you more important and increase your chances of a promotion or pay rise. Developed over 15 years through extensive professional use and including real business case studies, it is the ultimate pivot table course. With over 200 short downloadable video tutorials accessible online anywhere 24/7, 12-month personal support if you ever get stuck, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit MyExcelOnline.com today and give your professional development the boost it deserves.
Now, you're coming out with a new book. It's called MrExcel XL. 40.
XL.
Yeah, XL is an extra large. It's not XL extra large. It's actually the Roman XL, which means 40. 40 greatest Excel tips of all time. Now, why did you decide to create this book? And tell us a little bit about the title.
Sure. I've known this title for the last 2 or 3 years. I knew that there would be a book called MrExcel XL, and it would be my 40th book. I have this great trick. Sometimes I do a half-day seminar. Sometimes I do a full-day seminar. In the full-day seminar, people come back from lunch. They start to get a little bit tired, and I need to wake them up, right? So sometimes I'm talking about Excel functions, and I have this joke. I put together a quick little financial statement that's not a good financial statement. The company barely made any money. I said, this isn't happy financial news. And I said, there's a great function for when you have an income statement, with bad news, right? Yeah. And I just go over to column C and I type equal Roman, and I convert the financial statement to Roman numerals, right? And then hide column B. And people just laugh, right? It's a great joke. It wakes people up.
Yeah.
So there's a Roman function in Excel. How ridiculous is that? Who would ever use the Roman function?
The Romans?
I don't know. Do they still use Roman numerals?
I don't know.
I don't think so. So anyway, you have your list of books and you have they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've known that 40 is coming, and in Roman numerals, XL is 40, and it sounds like Excel, right? So to me, that's just a joke. There's a joke that developed into a book. I was talking to Scott Pearson, who worked for me. I said, Scott, the 40th book has to be MrExcel XL. He's like, what's going to be in it? I have no idea what's going to be in it. All I have is a title, but that I have to take advantage of my 40th book being something, something, right? There has to, I have a title. I need to make it into a book. And so having the title, it finally came time to write the book. And I decided, well, what I'll do is I'll just write about the 40 greatest Excel tips of all time. So it's kind of, the first section is really my seminar, just going through 40 tips. And of course, I am sneaky because within many of the tips, there are bonus tips. So you really probably get about 60 tips in those 40 tips.
Yeah.
And I decided that this is a milestone for me because Excel, is 40. Like my 50th book, that would be MrExcel L, right? Numeral for 50, right? There'll never be another book as special as this book. This is the book that has to be the amazing book. And I've published a lot of books, both written by me and by others. All those books are in black and white. I've done a couple of color books. Color books are horribly expensive to do. You have to print a lot of them. So last December, I launched a crowdfunding campaign originally I tried on Kickstarter, couldn't get it to work there, went with Indiegogo. And I basically just said, hey, if you pre-order the book, if you give me $24, I'll send you an autographed copy when it comes out. And we're trying to get enough money to pay for color printing. And wow, the thing just took off. It actually took off too much. I had too many pre-orders, too much money coming in. And so now I feel obligated because if you just do 40 tips, that's going to be 120 pages, right? And you can't. I felt like I'd be ripping people off by sending them 120 pages. So now you need to do something else, right? And I sort of cringed when I realized that the something else was getting silly, right? We decided to add Excel cocktails. Sylvia Juhas, who's a great Excel consultant out in Santa Monica, California, had pitched me a book of Excel cocktails, right? So we included Sylvia's cocktail section in there. Jordan Goldmeyer, another Excel MVP, has been pitching me to write a book of Excel jokes. So we have 40 jokes from Jordan. And then this one is backwards. Deborah Dogley, who runs contextures.com. Deborah has great Excel tips all the time, but I love every Friday, Deborah posts something called Excel Theater with just the greatest collection of tweets about Excel that Deborah's collected. And I've talked to Deborah. I said, Deborah, that's a book. You have this amazing database. This has to be a book. And so I went to Deborah. I said, all right, well, we're not going to do the whole book, but just give me your 40 favorite tweets of all time, and we'll do Excel Theater. So inside the MrExcel Excel book are, my 40 favorite tips, 12 Excel cocktails from Sylvia, 40 Excel jokes from Jordan, 40 greatest Excel tweets from Deborah. There were some pages at the end, so I kind of wrote some Excel adventures about my days on Tech TV and trying to get more people to write books for me and various things. I was out at Pass Back in San Jose, California. I ran into Sylvia and she said, well, how's the book coming? I'm really behind. So Sylvia signed on and she wrote a section with 30 more tips. And a lot of those tips were from the crowdfunding. So the people who had purchased the book up front, I asked them, I said, well, what's your favorite Excel tip? And so we took a lot of those tips and those made it into the section of 30. And then there's even 2 pages of tips. We were coming down to the end, like here's the tips that didn't make it into the book, but are brilliant tips that you can just understand from from 140 character tweet.
Yeah.
So, it'll be the basis for the next book, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it has to be. Man, I've been reading this book over the last week and it's remarkable. It's an incredible book. And look, if you get sick of tips and Excel, you can go to the cocktails and make yourself a drink and just relax. So that's the best thing about it.
Yes. Now I have to, let's be honest here, right?
Yeah.
These Excel cocktails were created in Cleveland. Sylvia was originally from Cleveland. There's a mixologist, a bartender up there named Eric Ho. Eric has just created cocktails that look stunning. Like there's a stacked column shot that looks like a stacked column chart. But we always laugh. It's like, well, that one looks good. Let's try that. And we look through the ingredients, right? And there's always some weird ingredient that no one has ever heard of. Like there's a cocktail named the Jitterbug Jelen, which has a half ounce of something called Falernum, right? Falernum. What the heck is Falernum? I go to my local liquor store, right? They don't have, what? What are you talking about? I had to go to some liquor superstore down in Melbourne, Florida, 20,000 square feet of, and they had one bottle of Falernum there. I'm like, Eric, why didn't you make these just a little bit more accessible to the average Joe? And so Mike Alexander runs Data Pig and his blog is Bacon Bits. So there is a recipe there where you actually do bacon-infused vodka, which my wife, Mary Helen, made some bacon-infused vodka. I mean, it took days.
What?
To create this. It's not one of these things where you can just, tough day at work today. Let's go make one of these cocktails. They all take a little bit of preparation.
Yeah, and I was reading into one because I like gin. I'm a big gin tonic drinker. And there was one ingredient that I go, what is this? What is this? And I got to look it up and find it. I don't think they're going to sell it here in Spain. So let me go through the list of cocktails. We have the Excel Libre, Sparkline Swizzle, Corrupt Formula, Broken Link, Stacked Column Shot, Dax on the Beach, Power Pivotini, I love that name.
Yes.
Control Plus B, RC Columns, Dirty Gervin, and Jitterbug Jelen. All right, now I have the Jitterbug Jelen here. It says, fun fact about MrExcel. When he's not shaking his Excel moneymaker, he's shining up his boogie shoes, then heading towards the world-famous Tropical Haven Dance Hall in Melbourne, Florida. Sunday nights, it's Don and Joey bringing the live music, while Bill and his 93 years young dad, Robert Jelen, captivate the crowd with the best ballroom shimmy shakes. Between cha-chas, Bill is often seen moonwalking towards his laptop to refresh his Excel-based dance card decision model. Salute. That's pretty funny stuff. And it's true, yeah?
Yeah, there's a basis in reality there. Sylvia was working on this over the winter, and so we were down in Florida for the winter. You know, something came up. Like she might have emailed me on Sunday night, and she's like, "Well," I'm like, I'm at this dance tonight." She's like, "What?" Right? So I filled in the details, and what's going on there is she mentioned my father. My father, Bob Jelen, has been dancing his whole life. Down in Florida, wow, there's so many retired people down there. There's dances every night. And I'm the driver, right? I'm his driver because he doesn't drive at night. So wherever he goes, you know, I'm the driver. That's what it is. So Marielle and I have been taking some dance lessons, you know, so we can kind of we're horrible, right? But at least we can kind of fake it out there on the dance floor. And so, yeah, Don and Joy at the Tropical Haven Dance Hall on Sunday nights. Down there in Melbourne, Florida.
All right, you should do a live stream one day via YouTube.
That would be hilarious from the
and I'm sure it will. And the Jitterbug Jelen, did you choose the ingredients?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not. But when she sent it the recipe up, you know, with a great little picture, we went out and found those ingredients and made up a batch, right? And so we've tasted it. And we approve, right?
Right. For your launch, you should have a party with all these cocktails.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
I'll be there in a second.
Okay. All right.
Good stuff. All right. Now, let's go to the first section of the book is Bill's top 40 tips. So they're your top tips that you've gathered through your Power Excel seminars, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I went through it and the first one, I knew what it was. And number 2, auto filter by selection. I had no idea you could do that. So
crazy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that is a beautiful, beautiful tip where Microsoft has put filter by selection in Excel. That's an old feature by Access, filter by selection, was in Excel. It's never been officially released as a feature, but it's just secretly in there. If you go to customize your quick access toolbar and look for the command called auto filter, it secretly does filter by selection. And that came from the MrExcel podcast, right? I showed someone how to, actually someone wrote in and said, you know, filter by selection is great in Access. Why don't they have that in Excel? So I wrote a 28-line macro to do filter by selection. And I put that out on the podcast. And at the end of the day, like 9 hours after I posted, someone wrote in and they said, you know, that's already in Excel. I'm like, what? And he told me the whole thing. I'm like, this is incredible, right? Yeah, so filter by selection, good. All right, that's good.
All right.
I got you on that one.
Yeah. And then number 3, I go, all right, now I'm losing here because everything is going to be new to me. Fill handle does no 1, 2, 3.
Typically, you know, you put in January, grab the fill handle, February, March, April, May. Put in Monday, grab the fill handle, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Put in Q1, grab the fill handle, it does the quarters. But if you put in the number 1 and grab the fill handle, it's just going to give you 1, 1, 1, 1, 1,
yeah,
all the way down, right? And you know, the classic thing, you put in the 1 and the 2 and select them both and then drag, right? That's the way I always did it.
That's right.
But I was at Kent State University at an accounting conference. I never caught her name, blonde-haired lady on the right-hand side in row 4. She raised her hand. She says, you know, if you hold down control and drag, it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I tried it, right? Oh my gosh. I hate to say it's life-changing. I hate to be that dramatic, but all of a sudden now you can make the 1 go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 just by holding down control. What a beautiful, beautiful trick.
We are Excel nerds and we're proud of it. So that's fine. There's other tips as well, but one that stood out was number 39, 3D maps. And I haven't used that a lot, but just reading that is just mind-blowing, isn't it?
The 3D maps, this is gorgeous. I've done so many silly things with the 3D maps. Anytime I have data that has some sort of geographic component, my wife and I have searched for a house using 3D maps. I've been on an airplane and tracked the flight of the aircraft that I'm on using 3D maps. The aircraft had Wi-Fi, of course.
All right.
Or just, so my neighbor has a store and he's trying to figure out where to advertise, and he has a list of all of his customers, right? I said, hey, just give me that list, and here, I'll draw you a map, right? And we could fly through the map and see where his customers are coming, and like, hey, don't spend money over there because you're not getting any customers from there. The people are coming from here. Yeah, just really, really good. And that, that is free. If you have Excel 2013, you can download Power Map, and it's just built into Excel 2016.
What do you have to put in, the longitude and
No, well,
addresses?
longitude and latitude work, but they use Bing for the process of geocoding. So if you have postal code or zip code, if you have city, state, even if you have street address, which, for the house search, we were down to the individual house level, 10 houses on a city block. And so we had street address there. Now it's funny, the 3D maps, by default, each little column that they draw is 1 city block wide. But I found the setting that let me make the columns 1/10, 10% of the normal width. And we could actually drive, just on my computer, drive up and down the street. We had a complete sales history of when the house last sold, when the house was built, every sale that's happened. It was just fascinating. And I'm thrilled to report that my wife, Mary Ellen, has finally found the perfect house, and we are moving to Florida full time here in about a month. It's funny, in the book, when I wrote the book, I was not moving to Florida. And it just happens coincidentally, the screenshot that I used in the book has a neighborhood, and our new house is in the book.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this all happened here very quickly, and coincidentally, my new house is one of the examples that I used in the book without even knowing it.
Wow, that's creepy. That's creepy. There's something there with this book, isn't there?
Yeah.
All right, and the last one, Speak Sales. Now, I used that about 10 years ago. I don't know, it was 10 years ago, but when I was working in the office and I was bored one day, and I'll activate the Speak Sales, so the actual cell will speak. If you typed in a word, it'll speak.
Yeah, right. I always talk about sometimes you just get data that you have to key the data in. There's no electronic version, right? Or whatever. We have to key the numbers, and now you're proofing the numbers. So you're looking at the screen, looking at the paper, looking at the screen, looking at the paper, looking at the screen. I show them how to add those 5 commands to the quick access toolbar. You select the column of numbers, and you can just have Excel read that to you. Now you keep your eye on the paper, right? You're not getting whiplash going back and forth, which may sort of be useful. It's always my last tip of the morning when I'm doing the live seminar. And then I say, but here is the really good thing. April Fool's Day, are you familiar with April 1st? It's the day for office pranks. I said, just wait till April Fool's Day and wait till your coworker goes to grab a cup of coffee, and then add to their quick access toolbar this icon called Speak Cells on Enter, right? And so I turn it on, and then I said, and then the best part is hold down the Alt key and drag it off the quick access toolbar. So you've now turned on the feature. And it's not up there in the quick access toolbar, so they won't see it anymore, right? They come back from getting a cup of coffee. They sit down and start to type their spreadsheet. And I type income statement. And Microsoft Anna, the voice in Windows 7, repeats back income statement, right? And the whole room just erupts in laughter, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful way to end the seminar on a funny note.
I'm sure.
So that was my 40th tip. Last tip of my section of the book.
I love it. And you also got 40 keyboard shortcuts, and that was by user votes, right? So people had to put in the favorite keyboard shortcuts, and you put in the top 40 shortcuts ranked from 1 to number 40 based on the number of responses.
Here, this is, we're talking about you're always learning something new about Excel. Someone wrote in about control backspace, which I had never used before and has now become part of my routine. Control backspace. So let's say that the active cell is, let's just say, at A2. And now you've either used the scroll bars or you've used Control-Shift down arrow, Control-Shift right arrow, and you're at the bottom of the data. Somehow you can't see the active cell anymore. If you press Control backspace, it recenters the active cell back into view, which is something I had never heard of, right? Someone just sent this in as their vote of their favorite keyboard shortcut. And I love it. In the process of writing this book, Olga from Russia sent in this trick. I'm like, that's incredible. So that was my number 8 tip in the keyboard shortcut list. Always learning something.
Always learning something. And you have Excel 30 anniversary tips by Sylvia Juhas. And she's got 30 tips there, a bit of macro, some advanced tips. I like the one on dependent data validation and also unpivot with Power Query. So there's some cool tips there. All right. Now, the best thing for me is a whole book, because you're just going to learn something new from it, aren't you? And also Excel jokes. I've got my Excel jokes with Jordan Goldmeyer. I went through these and I'm just going to read 3 of them, because that's the ones that I really liked, all right?
Yeah.
Why are spreadsheets like prison? So many cells. What do spreadsheet developers order at McDonald's? A big macro. I like that. And where do the spreadsheets go to down their errors? To the formula bar. I love it. And then you've got Excel Theater by Deborah Dalglish. One that really stood out, and because I was doing this when I was working in the corporate environment. It's a tweet that someone sent in. Wondering how long I can stare at this same Excel sheet before boss realizes I haven't done any work since lunch. I'm sure everyone goes through this on a Monday.
Yes.
And you've got a couple of Excel stories at the end, and also a periodic table of Excel keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, that's from Mike Alexander. Mike had shown me this a few years ago. I think he printed a poster of it. And, we're printing in color, right? And all of a sudden I realized that inside back cover, which I never bothered to print, is there and eligible to have a nice color graphic. And so I talked to Mike. I said, hey, let me license this from you. Let me put this on the back cover. And he's like, license it? Just use it. Put my logo on it, and yeah, so that great little set of keyboard shortcuts there at the end.
It just finishes it off, doesn't it? And
yeah.
Wait, when is this going live? When can people get a hold of this fabulous book?
Okay, so if your local Amazon.com or .co.uk or wherever should have the book by September 1st. So you can certainly get the book there. If you can't wait, then if you come to MrExcel.com and go to the Excel store in the left-hand navigation over there, I have the book right now available. We have both an ebook, so a PDF. It's easy to download. Download the PDF, or we can ship the book around the world. Boy, the post office has just made shipping really, really expensive anymore. So, if depending on where you are, the PDF might be the best way to go.
All right, guys, you can find the links to this book by visiting the show notes on MyExcelOnline.com/podcast. All right, Bill, I know that you've used keyboard shortcuts throughout your Excel life. You probably have hundreds, but give us your number one, your favorite keyboard shortcut.
All right, it is to convert formulas to values. I can still do it with my eyes closed. Control-C to copy, and then Alt-E-S-V. The E being for edit, S being special, V for values. Press Enter. So Alt-E-S-V, Enter will paste special values. And of course, there's the cousins, EST to paste special formats, ESDV to paste special add values. So those are the ones that I use all the time.
Have you ever had to replace the letters E, S, and V from your keyboard from using it too much?
No. It wouldn't matter. I know exactly where they are without looking. You can just white out those letters. It's fine.
Good stuff. All right, mate. What's your favorite Excel tip?
My favorite Excel tip. So you have 50,000 rows of data. You just entered a new formula in cell G2. Do not drag the fill handle, because it starts going faster and faster and faster. You'll never be able to stop. Instead, just go to the fill handle, double click. Excel looks to the left, figures out how many rows there are today, and copies it down to the last row.
What's your favorite function and why?
This is going to be controversial. I know it's going to be controversial. My favorite function is VLOOKUP. For me, VLOOKUP is the function that will save you from bad data. Bad data coming from the IT department. They forgot to give you, they gave you item number. They didn't give you item description because they're still living in the days when disk space was expensive, right?
Yeah.
But VLOOKUP will solve that without having to go back to the IT department and beg. And the reason that it's controversial is because there's people, I don't want to call them Excel snobs, who now look down on VLOOKUP and say, look, index and match is so much better than VLOOKUP. We haven't used VLOOKUP in the last 5 or 6 years.
They're called Excel MVPs.
But yeah, the whole index and match crowd, you know what? I understand your index and match is better than my VLOOKUP, but there's millions of people that understand my VLOOKUP and are confused by your index and match. So just let me keep doing VLOOKUP. That's my favorite function.
And VLOOKUP is faster if you put true as your final argument rather than false. And you've got a tip there, don't you, in your book?
I do. Yeah, that came from Charles Williams.
Yeah.
Charles, boy, Charles is my most respected Excel MVP. Charles has been around for a long time. Charles helped create the IBM PC. His code, there's still code that Charles Williams wrote in today's PCs back from when he worked at IBM. Here's a guy that knows everything about Excel speed. I have this funny story, which I don't have time for today in my live seminar, about a little war that erupted on Twitter about whether it's better to sort your data or not, the lookup table. And I had an example where I went from 40 seconds down to 30 seconds, down to 5 seconds, right? Using just better ways of sorting the table. And Charles Williams came along and looked at that and said, here, try this, right? And my 40-second method now runs 591 times faster, right? It's less than a second. It's like 0.4 seconds to do the same 14,000 VLOOKUPs using actually two VLOOKUPs. So Charles is doing twice as many VLOOKUPs as I am, both sorted, both true. Just an amazing thing. I wish I could do his British accent, because he tells it so well. So I've borrowed the trick. And when I say borrowed, I mean stole. And I showed in my Excel seminars, I put it in the Excel book. I always give Charles credit because he is the guy to go to if you have a problem at work, if you have a slow spreadsheet. And I have a great client in California. Every person has 20 copies of this spreadsheet, and there's 150 people, and it was running slow. And in 4 hours, Charles analyzed that spreadsheet. He found the bottlenecks, and he made it dramatically faster. And I think he charged my client maybe £400, $600, right? And now all of a sudden we have 3,000 spreadsheets that are running in 75% faster than they were before. The client was just thrilled, right? Charles is the foremost expert on spreadsheet speed, and just what a great guy.
I had the pleasure of meeting Charles in Amsterdam for the European Excel Summit, and he is a great man, a wealth of knowledge.
Yes, right, and just a great sense of humor. He has. This is a great story. He has a series of better functions in Excel, right? He's rewritten a lot of functions in Excel, and he's there with Microsoft, and he's offering it to them. He says, "I'll give this to you for free." I said, "No, Charles. If you offer to them for free, they won't do it. You have to try and sell it to them. Sell it to them for $1 billion, and then they will be incented to go steal it, right? And put those great things into Excel. If you give it to them for free, they won't think it's worth it." If Microsoft would implement some of the speed enhancements that Charles has done, it would just be great for all of us.
All right, buddy. What's one Excel add-in that you're always using?
I'm not trying to sell anything here. This is just something I give away.
Go for it.
I'm so frustrated with pivot tables. And in Excel 2007, they introduced this new thing called compact layout, where they put all of the row fields in column A.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is hideous. No one should do that. You shouldn't have one column with 10 different kinds of data, or even 2 different kinds of data. It's breaking all the rules. And they're so proud of it. They're so in love with it. They make that be the default, right? If you create a new pivot table, it's going to be in compact view. And then there's other things that annoy me. Like I really wish that it would pick up the number format. If the original data was formatted as currency with 2 decimal places, then hey, the pivot table should be formatted as currency with 2 decimal places. So I wrote a tiny little add-in called Better Pivot. BetterPivot.xlam. It just creates a pivot table that is in tabular form instead of compact form, and it brings along all of the numeric formats from the original data. right? And so it was one of these things I was thinking of selling for $5 or something like that. I just ended up just giving it away, so that's kind of my favorite little, and it's just an annoyance. It's something that Microsoft should offer us a checkbox somewhere that says, for your future pivot tables, what do you want to have be the default? I mean, that should be built in.
That's right. And where can people find this add-in?
Hey, let's put a link to it in the show notes.
All right, fantastic. And also, Deborah Douglas has an add-in called Pivot Power. And
Pivot Power.
Yeah, you choose your settings. You choose the way that you want your pivot table to look in a compact layout or tabular format. You can also do your dollar with a comma and a couple of decimal.
Yeah. I put Deborah's add-in in my book as one of my 40 tips.
Yeah, it's a great add-in, isn't it?
Yeah, Deborah's add-in actually just runs circles around my tiny little add-in. That's why I was forced to give mine away for free, because hers is doing, hundreds of things and mine only does 2 things. And so I said, well, I can't even price this at $5 because Deborah's, for hardly any money at all, is already doing so many better things. So if the only thing that bugs you is compact layout, if you want to get rid of that, then download my free one. Either way.
All right. Either way, you're going to save time. Apart from your blog, MrExcel.com, which has a plethora of resources, what's a great online resource for learning Excel?
All right. So Minda Tracy, who is a newer Excel MVP from Australia, has come along with her dashboard course. And she has a great newsletter that you can sign up for. Every week, she'll send you out some new Excel tips. I was always about making the numbers right and never about making anything look good. Minda is just has these amazing tricks that create these beautiful looking dashboards and charts that don't look like they came out of Excel. So I'm a big fan of Minda and her weekly newsletter. Lots of great tips there.
And she has her dashboard course, which is open 4 times a year. And it's actually closing as we're speaking tonight, 6th of August at 8 p.m. Pacific time. The listeners will probably won't have a chance to get into this course, but in 3 months' time, it'll be open again. So it's open 4 times a year. And I'll put a link there so you guys can go and have a look at the Excel dashboard course and also sign up for her weekly newsletter. All right, Bill, you've authored 40 books. That's a lot of books, mate. If you could recommend one Excel book for our listeners within those 40 books, what would it be?
Great question. All right. So the new book that just came out, MrExcel Excel, is a hugely fun book. It has 40 great tips. It has the cocktails. It has the jokes. It has the tweets. It's in full color. It's a lot of fun. But I'm going to go off of that and talk about a book called Power Excel with MrExcel. This is the book that I actually use in my seminars. The seminar handout is actually bound into the back of the book. 567 Excel mysteries solved. This book started out, the first edition had 277 ideas, and then it grew to 377, 527, 567. So I wrote half of this book, and then the people on the road wrote the other half of the book. It is a deep dive. There are solutions there to almost every problem. Every question that I get asked in the Excel seminars is answered in that book. So it just has a very deep knowledge base of tips that I've come up with and tips that I've gotten on the road. It takes you through pivot tables, VLOOKUP, automatic subtotals, data consolidate. It doesn't do any VBA. There's no VBA in that book. It's just straight Excel user interface. But that's my favorite book. That's the book that really just answers most Excel problems that I run into.
Amazing. And also, one book that's not yours, which inspired you when you were starting in Excel.
Well, I think like everybody, it was JWalk, right? I would always go out and buy John Walkenbach's Power Programming with Excel. That's how I learned VBA. When I wrote my VBA book, I tried to make it easier. I tried to make it be the beginner book before JWalk's book. But, you have to give a tip of the hat to John. He sold more books than all of us combined, I think, for so long. Now, I haven't bought any of John's books in a while because I guess I'm writing the competing book. If I could talk about a more recent book, there's a fellow named Mike Gervin who also has videos out on YouTube, the Excel is Fun channel.
Yep.
And Mike has written a book that cannot leave my desk, and it's called Control Shift Enter. It is in a book about Excel array formulas, how to do things in Excel that most people think are impossible. I love that book. I cannot internalize the things in that book. That's why it has to stay on my desk. If I need to come up with a formula that's going to extract a filtered list and sort it, I know it's in that book, right? I mean, it's in that book, and I can pull that example out and follow his logic and build that into my spreadsheet. Just an amazing collection of resources and formulas, just mind-blowing formulas in a small 350-page book.
I got to get Mike on this show and talk about that book and his YouTube channel, because he is just remarkable with the stuff that he brings out. You've got MrExcel, who's number one, and the deputy is Mike Urban, yeah?
Well, he has more videos than I do now. I have a hilarious story. I got a call from a client out in California who wanted me to. The guy made trail mix, right? Fruit and nut stuff, right? And he says, yeah, that funny Excel guy on YouTube. And I said, no, that's me. I'm the funny Excel guy on YouTube. And he said, no, he's funnier than you, right? And I hadn't heard of Mike's videos yet. I said, funnier than me?
Who can it be?
What are you talking? So I went out and found him, and I'll be darned, he is funnier than me.
Yeah. He's a good man.
Mike and I are good friends. We do the Dueling Excel podcasts, which are really, really popular. We'll have one problem. We each try and solve it in different ways. And when we get into a rhythm where we go back and forth like 6 or 7 or 8 times, people love that, right? That's just showing all these different ways to solve the same problem in Excel.
Mate, you can learn Excel from YouTube, and if you sign up to your channel and Mike's, you've got pretty much everything covered there. So great resources there. All right, guys, so you can find the links to this book and everything we've been chatting about today, including tutorials on Bill's favorite shortcuts and tips, by visiting MyExcelOnline.com/podcast. All right, Bill, we've come to the end of the show, and I've got a weird Excel scenario for you. Let's say that I'm a Excel beginner or intermediate user, and I want to learn the most important features because I've got a job interview coming up in a week's time. Now, with all the Excel knowledge that you know today and the online and offline resources available, what will be the quickest way for me to start learning Excel?
It's free. It's a resource. It's free. There was a book a few years ago. It was actually another book that I did in color along with Tom Erdis and Kevin Jones and Tyler Nash called Don't Fear the Spreadsheet. And this book is a 200-page book. I don't want you to take that time to go through those 200 pages. There's 3 case studies. The case studies lay out a problem and walk you through step by step how to solve that problem. The first case study is just formatting in Excel. The second case study will get you doing formulas. The third case study will get you doing pivot tables. And out on issu.com is a free PDF with just those 3 case studies. So you go out there. It is the greatest Excel job interview preparation tool there is. Absolutely free. In 3 hours, you'll be able to walk in there and talk the talk and walk the walk. And the hiring manager will think you've been using Excel forever.
Even if you haven't, and you get that pay rise, yeah?
That's right.
Wow.
There's so many jobs that require Excel skills. If you go in there and know those terms, pivot tables, VLOOKUP, and the whole bit, you will blow them away and get that job.
I should actually do a course preparing for a job interview. How to use Excel.
You should write a book.
Yes, that's what I want to do. My final thing is to write a book. If you can get me on your team.
Yes, absolutely. You're signed on. You write the book, I'll publish it.
All right.
You're in.
Sounds good. I've always wanted to write a book. I've got the YouTube channel, I've got my course, I've got my blog, I've got the podcast. The next thing on the list is a book. And
there you go.
All right, good stuff. Okay, what will be the best Excel feature that I should focus on if I had to go on this job interview?
Yeah, so if you can learn pivot tables, that will allow you to wow them, right? Because they will be able to take their horrible, ugly data and create summary reports in 6 clicks. So pivot tables, I think, is the feature. You can learn it quickly, drag some fields to a report, and knock their socks off with an amazing summary report.
Awesome, buddy. Appreciate that. Bill, thank you very much for coming on the show, mate. Yeah, I appreciate it. I've looked up to you for many years, and look, I'm here today interviewing you. I never thought it'd be possible, but you're just a down-to-earth guy with so much Excel knowledge, and you've helped so many people along the way, and you keep on helping them. So I got to thank you for that, mate. Good luck on the launch of your new book. I hope you bring on many books down the years and inspire more people to get better Excel and get better at the jobs and increase the salary and promotions and, have a better life. So
that's it.
You're the man, buddy.
John, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for doing this and for running your podcast. This was fascinating.
Thank you very much, Bill. And mate, I'm going to have you back on the show, hopefully one more time, to talk about another book of yours or anything else regarding Excel down the track. So if you're available.
Absolutely. Always available. I'd love to be back.
All right, buddy. Thank you very much and speak soon.
Thanks, John.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the MyExcel Online podcast. Be sure to subscribe and share this with your colleagues so they can reach their full Excel potential. You can also visit MyExcelOnline.com/podcast for show notes, as well as John's online Excel courses and free tutorials to help you stand out from the crowd. Until next time, keep excelling.